So, now on to the next bit. We're going to look at the ventricles now. That's kind of the traditional view of the ventricle. Who can see what the division is in that?
Division.
What's missing from that? So, what about its tail? Notice how that seems more alive, and that these tails, this is a side view. This one looks like a little man alien, and this one looks like a little woman alien. Now, notice how this really grounds it. It gives it an earth. And it gives it a whole different quality. For me, this is the fifth ventricle. Now, I think one of the reasons that it's divided by name, again, something's divided by name. These are ventricles. This is a canal. It's divided by name. And then you just get pictures of this, because this is no longer a ventricle, but that completes it. And my guess is one of the reasons for that is that in the traditional view, all of the cranial fluid from here comes out and then does this journey up and down the spine. It's impossible. But what happens here? Traditionally, if the cranial fluid in the ventricle is completely separate from the central nervous system, it will just go down there and stay there forever. There's no explanation for it at all. So again, the dynamic of that is not talked about and is not shown in any pictures. I bet no one can find pictures with all five anywhere. There's millions. If you go onto Google and click on images, see if you can find all five ventricles. It'll be very difficult. And again, that is an image that is suddenly whole, that you can use for your own healing. This is, when you've got the top, it's quite cerebral. It's not really grounded. That grounds it. Also gives masculine and feminine. So, the coryplexus. So in the traditional view, these are for the cranial fluid that comes out from the coryplexus, which is around in these areas, and then that flows off, does this incredible journey and leaves. This is the same as interstitial fluid for the body. It has oxygen that is for the cells of this environment. It has glucose to feed those cells. It has salt for the electrical charges that travels through the neurons. And the traditional view is that it doesn't go anywhere near the brain or the central nervous system or the cells. It travels around it and then leaves through the venous blood, and actually stopping venous blood and toxins leaving. So that isn't my view. For me, this central part, which is the very center of our system there, within the brain, within the spine, it holds the very central place. This is food for me, and I may be wrong, but this is food for the nerves. And it is not just like caves, like ventricles, they're like holes. That it is not like caves. These are like rivers, and that what they're majorly for, because if these ventricles were just for the cranial fluid, for the coryplexus, it comes out, it's pure water, oxygen, glucose, salt, there's no toxins. So if it were just for that, what use would it be that the coryplexus works both ways, that it produces cranial fluid, but also filters out, it's like a bit like a filter in a fish tank, will filter out carbon dioxide, will filter out toxins. What is the use of something that filters stuff out when there's nothing to filter out of it? When there's just pure cranial fluid in there, no toxins, no carbon dioxide. What would the filter part be any good, to take the carbon dioxide out, to take the toxins out? For me, the whole in the cerebrum, in the cerebellum, in the brainstem, in the body, well, actually in this area, more the cerebrum and the cerebellum. I've lost one of my props. Ah, there we go. It's creating all of this fluid that isn't accounted for. And for me, this fluid travels down through the nerves. Now, how does it get there? The cerebrum, that is about 85% of the volume of the whole central nervous system. There's no nerves there. So for me, that travels out around the whole cerebrum and down, and it also travels into the ventricles and down, because in a way the brainstem becomes the nerve for the cerebrum. That's its way out. That's the only place that this fluid can come out, is to flow down through the brainstem. And what you have, okay, you've got the cerebrum at the top. Underneath it you've got the tentorium, that's a membrane, and you've got a hole that the thalamus comes out through, and then the brainstem is dropping down. So in a way it's all got to come together and go through the thalamus. The lateral ventricles are wrapped around the thalamus. The third ventricle is in the centre of the thalamus. So for me, all of this fluid is moving inwardly. It's gathered up by the lateral ventricles. It's gathered up by the third ventricle, and it's renewed. The carbon dioxide is removed from it. The toxins are taken from it. So you end up with a new body of fluid, and it changes. Again, the image changes. Before you have the image of a cave and only going one way, and the cranial fluid is going on this weird journey from it. But as soon as you see it as fluid from the whole cerebrum coming, suddenly they become part of a river. And sorry, I've got so many pictures, I don't So unlike the body, the water can travel easily through the environment of the central nervous system. It is like the sea. The whole lining of the ventricles are the ependymal cells with very wide connections. It can just flow straight through and in. So you get that fluid coming in. I'm not sure which way it goes. Yeah. And in the lateral ventricles it will circle round and into the third ventricle and then drop. And then as soon as it's in the fourth ventricle, then there are all the nerves there. All of the cranial nerves, they come in through the brain stem, through the pons, and they all line. All the nuclei of the nerves press up against the fourth ventricle. And I don't think that's a coincidence. I think all of that nutrition, all of that oxygen, all of that glucose becomes nutrition that goes into the nuclei of the nerves and starts travelling along the nerves. Because where the nerves come out from the brainstem, from the spinal cord, there's nothing to feed them. Unless the blood supply from the central nervous system also travels down the nerves, which I don't think it does. I haven't been able to find out. I think those nerves don't have nutrition. So I think at the very centre of this whole system is this cranial fluid. That is food. It is light, it is a transmission, it is a connection to the universe and God and the earth and all of those things. But on a very physical, down-to-earth level, it is nutrition and needs to be used. In the rest of the body, it is used. It would be ridiculous to think that the interstitial fluid would come out from the capillaries in the rest of the body, travel down the arm, travel all the way back up the arm, and then go into the venous blood supply without being used. That would be a ridiculous thing to think. But that's how it is viewed in the brain, that fluid is not used. For me, that is used, and for me, I think it's used in the nerves, for that journey down through the nerves. Because there's nothing else feeding it other than into the nuclei from the middle, and then down around the outside. So the cerebrum, the vast amount of fluid has got to come down through that hole because there's no nerves. And then as soon as it's down, then it's expanding out through the nerves. Also from the cerebellum, this all comes back, the whole fourth, from the side view of the fourth ventricle, which is most of the pictures, is narrow. From face on, it's this big diamond. That is, the whole cerebellum joins onto that diamond. And then there's choroid plexus there. So the fluid, this cranial fluid from the cerebellum, is all going into the fourth ventricle, where it's renewed, where the toxins are removed, where the oxygen is replenished, and it can be used again. Then it also travels down. There's a use, and I call it the fifth ventricle, which would be the central line right down. It grounds. Suddenly you become aware of it. Suddenly you become grounded. If you just think of the ventricles of here, it's like, oh. Then you become aware of the fifth ventricle down spine. Suddenly, oh, a bit of ground. Thank God for that. So that comes down, and that continual flow down that, and then out into the nuclei of all of the nerves, spreading out through the whole body. Glucose, oxygen, salt, everything they need. There's a use for this food. So we're first going to look at that, because that is not depicted. And then we will bring in also the cranial fluid being produced in there. And if you think of it as it renewing the cranial fluid from the cerebrum, from the cerebellum, in a way, and producing oxygen, all that's left is just the water that comes out of it. So rather than them being a place just for the cranial fluid in this very traditional way, suddenly they become rivers. That's replenishing something, that's making it new, and then that becomes food again. It travels into the centre of the system and then becomes food and travels out through the nerves. It becomes food for the nerves. Now this is mirrored. If you watch the the venous blood starts moving out through the brain. It's kind of all right. The capillaries go out and out, and they become the venous blood on the surface of the brain, and then into the ventricles. So as the venous blood leaves the brain and the central nervous system, it comes into 5. What are they called?
Sinuses.
Pardon?
Sinuses.
Sinuses, which is kind of like a ventricle. It's a very similar thing. There are 2 lateral sinuses and there's 3 central sinuses. In ventricles, there's 2 lateral ventricles, and if you include the 5th ventricle down the spine, there's 3 central ventricles. So the blood flow leaving the brain in venous blood enters kind of into 5 ventricles and then into veins. The cranial fluid leaving the brain and travelling down the nerves, which would be like the lymph, travels into 5 ventricles and also leaves. So it's got an imagery to it. It's got a sacred geometry to it. That fluid has got a use. It's a river rather than this held, blocked, kind of divided, trying to remember the barrier, these barriers, they're filters, they're mutable, and they move. And it is protected. That whole fluid stays cranial fluid. You don't get the same fluid that comes out of the blood in the rest of the body. It is completely protected, but it's protected by flow. It's protected by filters. It's a whole different imagery. And we're just going to look at some pictures. Hang on. Oops. So this is Netta. Do you still have Netta? Mm-hmm. Okay. See how big the ventricles are, and how they connect to all the different parts of the brain to absorb the fluid. Then it comes round and it can travel down. Look at the 4th ventricle here, how it comes right into the cerebellum. Just a fine cord, it comes right into the centre, and then instantly you've got the choroid plexus. To look at the traditional view, there's no need. There's nothing there for it to filter out. But if all of this fluid from the cerebellum is coming in there, then that takes away the carbon dioxide, that takes away the toxins, and suddenly you've got new fluid there. You've got the choroid plexus through here that's renewing all the fluid from there. This is where my pictures stopped. I was going to paint this, and I just suddenly couldn't paint anymore. You've got all of the cranial nerves. Look how all of the nuclei, they all butt up. See here, it's right onto the 4th ventricle. They all press against the 4th ventricle. This is completely, the endothelial cells are completely porous. This is all nutrition. You think they're not going to use that nutrition? From the side, see, it looks very narrow. This is normally the picture we see. From the side, it's very narrow. From the back, see, it's much wider. See, it's wider at the top here, this canal coming down, and you get this great big diamond shape. This is the connection to the whole of the cerebellum. So for me, the whole fluid from the cerebellum is draining into here, becoming renewed. It's a river rather than a cave. Then it traps, see all of these, they're all pressing up against the wall as it comes in. For me it becomes for those nerves. Hang on, let's go on. See here? all of these nerves, all going directly into the fourth ventricle.
Where's the point?
They all come in between the brainstem and the cerebellum there. You see how the fourth ventricle comes right into the heart of the cerebellum, and this is this half. It's doing the same on the other side. It's like a diamond. It comes right into the root of it, and this is right in there. Again, you can see how fine this membrane, the fourth ventricle is almost part of the cerebellum. Alright, so I don't know if you can see it. Look at the side. This is the bottom thing of the fourth ventricle, of the lateral ventricles, then the, which way it's going this way, and then the upper ones will be up. Look at the amount of space in that, and look where it is situated. All this extra fluid from in here will just pour into that. It's a vent. It's completely pours, more than anywhere in the whole body. And then as soon as it's in, you've got the choroid plexus. See, I like this one. You can see the choroid plexus is adjoined to the thalamus, that is wrapped around the thalamus, and it expands out. You've got the tentorium coming in here, and then the ventricles and the third ventricle there, acting as these places for the fluid to flow into, and then the choroid plexus renews it. There's no other use in the ventricles for a filter that removes carbon dioxide and toxins, other than if cranial fluid is flowing into it with carbon dioxide and toxins in the cranial fluid, and the body doesn't make things that it doesn't use. So again, it gives, and you can see the back of the here, this big diamond, which is where the whole cerebellum is joining in. So that is my image of those. So they're not caves, they're like part of rivers. And that it's interesting that there's 5 of those that mirror how the venous blood leads. The venous blood leads through 5 ventricles as well, 2 lateral ones, 3 central ones. The cranial fluid from the cerebrum and the cerebellum feed into 5 ventricles, 2 lateral ones, 3 vertical ones, and they then become like the lymph going off down through the nerves or down through the nerve capillaries.
Can I ask you a question? I mean, in the way we're taught it and teach it, is we say that the choroid plexi, the purpose of the filter is not to filter one lot of cranial fluid to another lot of cranial fluid, it's to filter arterial blood to create cranial fluid.
Yeah, no, but it is a filter that here you've got the blood supply here inside the choroid plexus. It will filter water, oxygen, glucose, salt, and whatever the cranial fluid needs into the ventricles. It is a filter that works both ways. It will also filter out of the ventricles toxins and carbon dioxide. It's like it isn't a one-way filter, it's a two-way filter. It breathes, it goes both ways. See, this is the old image that just teaches it's for creating cranial fluid, full stop. But if you read if you read in the book, they'll also say it filters the other way as well. It filters out carbon dioxide, filters out toxins. There's no need for that other way if it's only cranial fluid that's just been produced in there. It needs the other cranial fluid with the toxins and with the carbon dioxide for that other half to be used. It's a very clever filter.
And it would it then dump the carbon dioxide toxins into the blood?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is a bit similar to how the uterus, what is it you get with the placenta works. You've got the blood, both the arterial blood and the venous blood in a space, and then a wall around it that's taking out the nutriments, but also all the toxins go back through that wall into this whole space, and then the venous blood takes it all back. Otherwise, there's no use for that venous blood. If it's only producing cranial fluid that's got no carbon dioxide in it, there's no carbon dioxide to go back in that venous blood. It needs another fluid to come in, and it works the same as the rest of the body. It gives out oxygen, nutriments, takes back toxins and carbon dioxide. Back. See, it makes sense if you look at it in the correct way. It doesn't make sense if you look at it in the traditional way. We could get a bit, I mean it's a long time ago, but they give a whole view of it. So first of all, there's this one that everyone's seen that. It has a very particular quality but shows them whole. Now, with the membranes on, this is the lower brain, it's the brain stem, thalamus, the cerebellum and the ventricles. They look a bit like staffs for me, and generally, again, as people look at the spine joining into the cranium, it's kind of separated. And this stops, for me, the Kundalini energy rising up here. Unless you have an image of it joining into the brainstem, into the cerebellum, into the thalamus, it kind of stops there. So it gives you an image of continuing. And for me, they're like staves, and this is the head of the staves at the top. You see how in the kidneys, coming down to the bladder, the penis, vagina, this also is filtering water. Can you see how those two systems mirror each other there? Got the lateral ventricles, how they fit so nicely into the cerebrum as a place to receive the water and of water. And then the thalamus in the centre where it's all coming into, and then they've got the ventricles around it and then dropping down. There, I haven't actually seen it. It gives a really nice quality when you add the ventricles and the brainstem and the cerebellum together. It actually brings it to life. It includes the and this is from the front. For me it's quite female, and it's interesting, a lot of people liken this a bit to the female genitalia, And for me, this energy of this central area here and the ventricles has that quality of creation to it. It has that feeling in those waters there. And so in a way it gives you a nice way of building up an inner picture of what is there, so you can visualize. And here you have that with the cerebrum over the top. So it's nice to watch how a way it can be built up. It's really quite simple how you can image that whole system. Alright, so let's do a meditation. Okay, so closing your eyes. Closing your eyes and dropping into the holographic breathing. On the in-breath, the jaw gently opening. On the out-breath, the jaw gently closing. And the whole body breathing, every cell gently with the jaw. Be aware of the heart and the blood flow coming from the heart up. First to the cerebrum, and then the cerebrum, probably about 350 miles of capillaries with this finely tuned filter that creates cranial fluid. And venous blood returns through the sagittal sinus. Being aware of that cranial fluid, and then that has to go somewhere. It can't just keep building up, so it spreads out around the cerebrum. And it comes inwardly as well into the ventricles, these lateral ventricles. It all drains into the lateral ventricles. It's all been food for the cells. It's fed the cells the oxygen, it's fed the cells the glucose, has fed the cells, the salt has fed the cells, and then the glucose and oxygen makes carbon dioxide, and this is leaving. And the cranial fluid with the carbon dioxide and different toxins empties into the lateral ventricles. And here it starts being filtered by the choroid plexus, which takes back the carbon dioxide, takes back the toxins, becomes new. And also the choroid plexus gives off extra water as well. And this circles round from the lower ventricles round in a big horseshoe, round into the top of the lateral ventricles, and then drops down in the centre of the thalamus to the third ventricle, which is also receiving cranial fluid from all around and is being renewed, having the carbon dioxide and toxins taken, and is receiving oxygen. And then from here drops down to the fourth ventricle. And behind the fourth ventricle you have the cerebellum, all flowing into, same thing, flowing into the fourth ventricle. And all of the nerves coming into the brain stem, the cranial nerves. A lot of this cranial fluid is going into those and travelling off down through the nerves, through the nerve capillaries. And the cranial fluid is also travelling right down the centre of the spine in the fifth ventricle. Notice how grounded that becomes, how it grounds the system. It becomes food for the nerves and food for the central nervous system both. And also the cranial fluid flows out the fourth ventricle into the surrounding space. Again, it becomes food for the nerves, and down around the whole spine. So you have this mass of cranial fluid moving slowly, very slowly, back to the heart, from the cerebrum and down, from the cerebellum forwards and down. Then out through the nerves, down through the whole spine, and out through the nerves, through these little nerve capillaries, millions and millions of little nerve capillaries travelling off through the whole body. They're like little rivers of cranial fluid feeding the whole body. So you have a communication network of water. Not only is it food, but light travels through it, light, dark light, coloured light. Information travels through it, cosmic, universal energies, energies from the higher self, come down into this water, travel through this water as light, feeding the whole body. And also from the body, from the muscles, from the organs, light travels back up through these nerve capillaries, through the fluid, through the water, as light travelling the other way. Rises up through the nerves, through the central nervous system to the brain, So you get a communication both ways. Also the fluid flows out from these nerve capillaries out into the lymph and back to the heart. And then blood, arterial blood comes to the central nervous system. It's 400-mile long, very fine filter that produces water. To the cerebrum, notice the quality of the cerebrum. It flows like a river into the ventricles, into the lateral ventricles, into the third ventricle, down through the brain stem. Cerebellum produces this water that flows forwards into the brain stem and around the brain stem. Flows down the whole spine and the fifth ventricle, down the center of the spine. And this fluid spreads out down through the little capillaries, nerve capillaries, millions of nerve capillaries. Being aware of the nerves at the base of the spine, the sacrum, the pelvis there. Notice if you feel a pulse, an energy coming from this area, traveling up through the spine, through the fluid, through the glial cells, the neurons, traveling up the spine, through the neck, through the brain, through the cranium. An energy traveling up that transforms, including the cells, not just the fluid, it's through all of it. This heals the brain, heals the central nervous system. Notice the quality of the brain stem as it extends from the spinal cord. Notice the quality of the cerebellum. Notice the quality of the cerebrum. This travels out through the cranial nerves, through the face, around the cranium, down the vagus nerve, through the organs, out through the nervous system, through the whole body, and grounds and heals. And also the higher energies coming down. So heaven and earth meet. Feel any If you feel any releasing in your spine, let that happen. Feel any releasing in the cranium, let that happen. Remember to do holographic breathing. Let your whole body heal. You can feel an energy running up your spine and through your brain. Just allow it to happen. And breathe. Lightening up the breath and sending a thank you to the earth and sending a thank you to the higher self. And a thank you to yourself for participating. You've built up energies in this, allowing those energies to go off to the earth for love and healing, to the higher self for love and healing, allowing them to come to yourself for love and healing, and out to all sentient beings for love and healing. You are a sentient being, allowing yourself to be loved and healed. And when you feel ready, allowing yourself to come back. So in holographic breathing, there's a gentle motion of the jaw. Jaw opens on the in-breath, closes on the out-breath, and it's a small motion. And people find their own amount, and it varies over a period of time. But it's not big, maybe 3 or 4 millimeters, quarter of an inch, sometimes less. And on the same time as you're doing that, the lips are closed all of the time, and upper surface of the tongue is on the roof of the mouth, and as much as feels comfortable. And quite often when people are learning, and a bit later, people are used to opening the jaw and the lips open at the same time. So the lips open, or they open the jaw and the tongue comes off the roof of the mouth. But there's an innate ability, probably from suckling, that the lips can stay sealed, not tense, in a relaxed way, that they can stay closed in a relaxed way and the jaw can move, and the tongue can have a relaxed and soft seal to the roof of the mouth as the jaw moves. I'll just demonstrate so people can see that it really is a very subtle movement of the jaw. So I'll just do just for a few moments. So and very quickly you drop into an alternative state, kind of a shamanistic, very relaxed place. So we're going to go through some exercises, but this time with our eyes open. First of all, to get that seal on the lips, notice you can kind of purse your lips. You can it goes in here. And the lips stay closed. Try that a few times. You drop the jaw and the lips stay closed. And now also put the tongue on the roof of the mouth and pull the jaw down. And notice it's like you get a suction with the tongue as the jaw drops down. So you can make a seal, and that is very similar to what babies do. Their lips seal around the nipple in a relaxed way, and the tongue seals the nipple to the roof of the mouth. So we can make a seal, a natural ability to making a seal. But now doing that in a very relaxed way with a much smaller motion of the jaw. So the lips are relaxed with a light seal, the flat of the tongue on the roof of the mouth with a very relaxed seal, and now just in a small way, or however big, opening the jaw. The lips stay sealed, the tongue stays on the roof of the mouth. The jaw closes, the lips stay sealed, the tongue stays on the roof of the mouth. Now make that movement a bit smaller. And now it's a bit like a pump. Notice as you're opening the jaw, it's natural to breathe in through your nose. As your jaw drops down, it's like a little pump. It brings the air in through the nose. Then as the jaw rises, it's like a pump. The breath comes out through the nose. So just being with that, and make the movement smaller. The jaw opens, you breathe in through the nose. The jaw closes, you breathe out through the nose. The tongue stays on the roof of the mouth. The lips stay closed with a very light seal. And now turning that round, so rather than the focus being on the jaw, you change the emphasis. Be aware of the breath coming in through your nose, and as the breath comes in, the jaw gently opens. Then as the breath comes out, the jaw gently closes. And notice how that takes the pressure away from the jaw. It becomes much more relaxed when you have the emphasis on the breath. So as you're breathing in, the jaw gently opening. The lips still have this very natural light seal. The tongue has a very natural light seal. Then as you breathe out, the jaw naturally closes. And notice there's a lot of people already closing their eyes and going into an altered state. Notice you start feeling very relaxed, and it's hard to keep your eyes open. You're drifting into a different state. As you breathe in, the jaw naturally opens with it. As you breathe out, the jaw naturally closes. And smaller, slower motion of the jaw, the lips stay relaxed and closed, the tongue stays on the roof of the mouth. Relax the back of the neck, relax the back of the head. Notice it gets harder and harder to actually do it and keep the eyes open, because you're drifting into a different state of consciousness. And it's good to relax the back of the neck and back of the head, because a lot of the energy is coming through there. Now letting the eyes close, and if you want, let the eyes close. Just naturally being with that. As you breathe in, the jaw is gently opening. As you breathe out, the jaw gently closing. Notice how natural that feels. You get these waves of energy, waves of relaxation moving through your body. Very soft, relaxed seal in the lips, very soft, relaxed seal in the tongue. It's the upper surface of the tongue on the roof of the mouth. The tip of the tongue is close to or touching the front teeth. Maybe half an inch or an inch of the tongue on the roof of the mouth. The more you do, the more of the tongue naturally starts covering the roof of the mouth. But start off with whatever feels most comfortable. Notice you go into this place. that's halfway between being awake and being asleep. It's like the dream state. It's a very shamanistic space. It feels very natural. Relax the throat. As you breathe in, the chest is opening, the jaw is opening. As you breathe out, the chest is closing, the jaw is closing. As you breathe in, the abdomen is opening, the jaw is opening. As you breathe out, the abdomen is closing, the jaw is closing. You may be able to feel it right down into the pelvis. So breathing in, the pelvis is opening, the jaw opening. As you breathe out, the pelvis closing, the jaw closing. But also notice in a very subtle way, the whole face has started to breathe. This gentle motion of the jaw connects through every cell, through every part of us, and it especially connects up through the face, through the brain, through the cranium, through the neck, through the throat, connects it to the rest of the body. And this whole area that wasn't really breathing so much before, in a very subtle way starts to open and close with the breath. And it's not a physical thing you're aiming for, it's very subtle. The more subtle you do it, the stronger, more profound the experience is. And as the jaw closes, it's okay for the teeth to touch, but they just float together. There's no pressure. They're not resting and pressing together. They may just bounce around, gently touching a tiny bit. Or the jaw can just be slightly separate as you breathe out. Breathing in, the jaw gently opens with the breath. Breathing out, the jaw relaxes closed. It relaxes open and it relaxes closed. And you drop into a deep, shamanistic, alternative space, a channel. But it's your own channel, it's you, your energies, connecting with the earth, connecting with the higher self, which are reflections of you, very resourceful, very nutritious on all levels. Okay, and gently allowing yourself to come back.